Drama is a starving beast. It feeds on your reaction, not your silence. And the moment you stop feeding it, it begins to die. Every sigh, every angry text, every sleepless night, that's oxygen to the fire. But every breath you hold steady, that's the fortress being built inside you. Hey, I'm talking to you. Yes, the one who's been fighting invisible battles, bleeding energy for people who don't even respect it. I know, because I did the same. I once argued with a friend until midnight, pulse racing, face burning, and I thought I'd won. The next morning, the friendship was gone. That's when I learned you can win the argument and still lose yourself. But here's the twist. When you stop reacting, toxic people don't disappear. They panic. They claw harder, trying to drag you back into the storm. And that's when most people break. But not you. Not anymore. Because today, you'll learn a different kind of strength. We'll walk through 10 rules. Each one is practical. Each one you can do immediately. In your office, in your kitchen, in the middle of an argument. These rules aren't about cutting people off. They're about cutting off their power. By the end, you won't just know how to deal with toxic people. You'll feel something deeper. Peace is not something you wait for. Peace is something you create. Create it in your breath. Protect it in your choices. Defend it with your silence. That's not poetry. That's survival. So let me ask you this. If your peace had a price tag, why keep selling it cheap to those unworthy? And here's the real question. Is strength the ability to crush others, or the power to no longer need the fight? The first rule is to walk off the stage, starve the show. Toxic people are not performers by accident. They are performers by design. They rehearse guilt trips like theater lines. They craft drama like it's a script. And they survive only if the audience keeps clapping. And the audience is you. Every time you explain, defend, or argue, you're still seated in the theater. Spotlight on them. That's why the smartest move is not to win the scene. It's to walk out of the theater entirely. I remember the day a business partner mocked me in front of the team, throwing little daggers dressed as jokes. My chest tightened. My blood burned. I wanted to tear him down. But then I noticed his hand trembling as he gripped his pen. That tiny tremor told me everything. His chaos was his prison, not mine. So I leaned back, let the silence linger, and said nothing. He tried harder to perform, but without my reaction, the room grew heavy. The audience stopped clapping. In that silence, he lost control. Honestly, if there had been an Olympic sport for overreacting, I would have been training for gold that day. Here's the perspective most people miss. Arguments with toxic people are not real battles. They are performances staged to steal your attention. You may think you are fighting for respect, but really, you are donating your energy to their show. And the more you play, the more they sharpen their act. They thrive on the back and forth, the heat, the spectacle. You are not just defending yourself. You are paying them with the one currency they crave: reaction. When you choose silence, when you choose to step off that stage, you are not being passive. You are reclaiming authorship of your life. You are teaching your body that your peace is not for sale, that not every provocation deserves a performance. The fortress within you grows every time you refuse to buy another ticket to their drama. Think about it. What would happen if the next time someone baited you, you didn't flinch? If you didn't clap back, didn't rush to prove your worth, didn't provide oxygen for the fire? The beast would starve, not with a whimper, but with a silent, desperate gasp. The show would end. And all that energy you used to waste in chaos, you could spend it building, healing, rising. Silence is not surrender. It is the oxygen cut. It is you rising from your seat, leaving the beast on stage with nothing to devour. The moment you stop feeding it, the drama begins to starve. The show ends the moment you stand up and walk out. Which stage in your life still has your chair on it? And when will you finally leave it empty? The second rule is to the quiet boundary. Response, not reaction. Strength is not in the volume of your voice, but in the steadiness of your response. Reaction is a reflex. Response is a choice. And the line between the two is the line that decides whether you remain free or become their puppet. I remember one evening when someone close to me threw a subtle dagger disguised as care. "Must be nice to live only for yourself," they said, smirking across the table. The old me would have risen like fire, defending, explaining, dragging old wounds into the present. But that night, something shifted. I felt the heat climbing my throat, but instead of unleashing it, I inhaled slowly and let stillness wash over me. We'll talk when we're both ready to listen. No storm, no scene, no loss of self. Just a quiet boundary drawn like a blade of light. And believe me, for someone who once treated every dinner argument like a courtroom drama, that was progress. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as strategy. Not walking away bitter, but walking away whole. The beast craves reaction. The fortress is built through response. Craft your boundary sentence now. A line so simple it cannot be twisted. Something like, "I'm available for solutions, not scenes." Deliver it once. Do not decorate it with apologies. Do not hand them ammunition with extra words. Use the 3-word shield. Choose your words. Calm, clear, kind. Whisper them inside your chest before any reply. They anchor you when provocation tries to scatter you. When you respond, not react, you're no longer an actor in their script. You become the author of your own. The beast wants to provoke. The fortress chooses its gates. Boundaries aren't walls. They are doors you decide when to open. If you've ever chosen silence just to protect your peace, hit the like button now, not for me, but as a promise to yourself that your calm is worth keeping. The question for you: what boundary sentence will you choose to protect your peace this week? The third rule is the mirror move. Reflect, don't absorb. Not every arrow that flies through the air is meant for your heart. Most of them are simply maps of the shooter's pain. Toxic words are mirrors. They reveal more about the person who threw them than the one they are aimed at. Yet most of us catch these arrows, press them against our skin, and call them truth. That is why we bleed. I once worked with a manager who never missed a chance to humiliate someone in front of the team. One morning, he pointed at me and said, "Some people clearly can't keep up with the pace here." Everyone looked my way. The old me would have defended myself, rushing to prove my worth. You know that moment when your brain writes a 500-word email in 5 seconds? Yeah, I was ready to hit send without even touching a keyboard. But that day, I simply nodded, smiled slightly, and said, "Thank you for noticing. I'll review the process." Then I went back to my notes. His face tightened. The laughter he expected never came. Because I didn't absorb the insult, I reflected it back without giving him the reaction he craved. And in that moment, the room saw his insecurity, not mine. But here's where most people get stuck. At work, you might manage to keep calm. Yet at home, one careless phrase from someone you love can cut 10 times deeper. I remember once being told by a girlfriend, "You always care more about your goals than about me." For a second, I almost swallowed that arrow whole. But then I caught it. Her words were a mirror of her own fears, not my truth. If I had absorbed it, I would have carried a wound that wasn't mine. Instead, I breathed, smiled sadly, and said, "I hear you." That was enough to reflect without inflaming. Mirrors don't just reflect faces, they reflect intentions. The person in front of you reveals what's really inside them, even when they try to aim it at you. Absorbing their words is like gluing someone else's graffiti onto the walls of your house. Reflecting means showing them their own handwriting and refusing to repaint your soul with their colors. Practical step 1 is the label drill. The next time someone lashes out, quietly name the pattern inside: blame, bait, projection, guilt. Once you name it, the spell breaks. Practical step 2 is the family test. When a hurtful phrase comes, ask yourself, would I accept this if it came from a stranger on the street? If not, you don't absorb it even from the person you love. Reflection is not coldness, it is clarity. Reflection is not about revenge, it is about freedom. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. If someone spits venom, the mirror doesn't swallow it, it simply shows them their own face. You can do the same. When you stay calm, their chaos echoes back to them. And often, that echo is louder than any defense you could give. The fortress inside you grows taller every time you refuse to decorate it with someone else's graffiti. Reflections reveal, absorptions wound. So ask yourself, what cutting comment are you still carrying that never truly had your name on it? The fourth rule is oxygen control. Starve the fire. Fires don't love wood. Fires love oxygen. And toxic people are exactly the same. They don't thrive because of their words. They thrive because of the air you keep pumping into them. Your anger, your guilt, your desperate explanations, that's their oxygen. I used to waste hours replaying a single text message, crafting replies, defending myself in long paragraphs that nobody respected. Some of those texts were so long, they could have qualified as short novels. Shame no one was buying the rights. It took me a long time to realize I wasn't talking to them. I was feeding them. Every overthinking session, every anxious refresh of my phone, more oxygen for their flame, and the fire burned higher. Not because they were strong, but because I couldn't stop giving them breath. You control the oxygen. Your attention is not neutral. It's a currency, and every toxic person knows how to make you spend it. They send vague messages to hook you. They stay silent just long enough to make you panic. They know if they get your reaction, they've already won. But once you stop paying, once you stop pumping air into their drama, the fire flickers. So how do you do it? The first step is to cut the oxygen at the source. Silence your notifications. Don't rush to open every bait they send. You're not punishing them. You're training your nervous system. You're teaching your body that not every bell demands a bark. The second step is to limit the oxygen in your own head. Set a timer. Give yourself 90 seconds to think about the situation. Then stop. If the thought returns without a solution, it doesn't get in. This is oxygen discipline. The beast craves breath, but the fortress chooses when to inhale. That's how you turn from prey into presence. Starve what steals you. Feed what builds you. So ask yourself, where does your attention leak most? And how much oxygen are you willing to waste on a fire that was never yours to fight? And you, yes, you scrolling right now, have you noticed how much oxygen you've been giving away lately? The fifth rule is rehearse peace. Stillness reps. Use the elevator drill. Every time a door closes, breathe. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. Train in the small moments until it becomes second nature. You don't build calm in the middle of chaos. You build it in the small, ordinary moments, the way an athlete builds muscle in quiet gyms long before stepping into the arena. I used to think peace was something mystical, that one day it would simply descend on me, like a sudden sunrise. The truth? Peace is a discipline. It's reps. It's training. If you only practice calm when someone is screaming at you, you're already too late. I remember standing in a crowded elevator after a rough day. Normally, I would scroll my phone, feeding the tension. But that day, I decided to train. Doors closed. I inhaled for 4, held for 2, exhaled for 6. By the time the doors opened again, my pulse had slowed, and no one in the elevator even noticed that I had just done a rep of inner strength. That's what stillness looks like. Invisible on the outside, transformative on the inside. The same way athletes don't wait for the championship game to practice, you cannot wait for the toxic person to arrive before you train your silence. You rehearse peace daily, so when the storm hits, your body already knows the rhythm. Name then neutral. When you feel heat rising, instead of saying, "You make me angry," simply name it inside. I feel heat. The moment you name it, you separate from it. You are no longer consumed. You are in control. Sometimes the strongest victories are the ones no one applauds. No one claps when you master your breath in a hallway. No one cheers when you choose stillness instead of snapping. But these invisible reps are what build the fortress. Calm is not a gift. It's a muscle. If one of these small daily practices spoke to you, drop it in the comments. You'll remind yourself, and you might give someone else the breath they desperately need today. And the question for you: which daily moment this week will you turn into your training ground for peace? The 6th rule is approval, detox, self-respect. First, most people stay chained to toxic people not because of fear, but because of hunger. The hunger for approval. It is the most silent addiction. You think you want their apology, their recognition, their praise, but what you really crave is your own respect. I once found myself typing paragraphs to defend my worth to someone who had no intention of understanding me. The words poured out like a sales pitch for my dignity. Then I stopped, stared at the screen, and realized if I needed to beg for validation, I had already sold myself too cheap. I deleted the message, closed the laptop, and went for a walk under the cold night sky. The silence of that street respected me more than that person ever could. When you chase their approval, you are auditioning for a role in a play you never wanted. And every time you do, you're handing them the power to decide if you are enough. But when you anchor yourself in self-respect, the script burns. You walk off stage, and suddenly, the audience doesn't matter. Practical step 1 is to apply the no exposition rule. Say what you mean in 3 sentences or less. Anything beyond that, and you're not explaining, you're selling. Practical step 2 is to write a values receipt at the end of the week. 5 actions you did that aligned with your principles. That piece of paper is proof, not their claps, not their approval, your receipt. Letting go of their praise isn't cold, it's warm. Because when you no longer need their applause, you are free to give your love without fear. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. No one behind you, no one clapping, no one judging. Just you. The silence asks one question. Do you approve of the person you see? When self-respect enters, manipulation leaves quietly. So ask yourself, whose approval are you still chasing? And what would your life look like if your own respect was enough? But here's what almost nobody tells you. Toxic people don't fear confrontation. They only fear one thing, and you're about to discover it. Listen closely. The seventh rule is alchemy of pain. Turn hurt into standards. Pain always comes uninvited. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door open, throws your balance off, and dares you to fall. Toxic people hope that pain will shrink you, keep you doubting, unfinished. But pain can also be fire, and fire can forge steel. Back in my student days, I was in love with a girl named Laura. She was brilliant, magnetic, the kind of person everyone seemed drawn to. But being with her often felt like standing in a courtroom, always defending my worth. If I didn't text quickly, I was distant. If I did, I was clingy. No gesture seemed enough. And like a young fool, I kept auditioning for a role I had already won, but never felt secure in. I remember one night in a cramped dorm room, after yet another argument, sitting at my desk writing an apology message so long it could have doubled as a thesis. Halfway through, I caught myself smiling bitterly. Look at you, I thought, turning your love into an essay nobody asked to read. That humor, dark as it was, saved me. It woke me up. I realized Laura's shifting standards weren't the real trap. My lack of standards was. I wasn't failing her test. I was failing my own. That night, I deleted the draft, closed the laptop, and walked outside into the cold night air. And with every breath, I repeated to myself, no more auditions, no more begging to be enough. My pain had just become my policy. That's the alchemy. When hurt stops being a wound and becomes a law you live by. You stop saying, I'll never let that happen again, and instead say, I'll never lower my standards again. The scar becomes a contract you write with yourself. Practical step 1 is the 1-degree upgrade. Raise one boundary by just 10%. Reply later. Leave earlier. State your needs more clearly. Small hinges swing big doors. Practical step 2 is the evidence journal. Each night, write 2 short lines. Today I kept my peace by, and tomorrow I'll protect it by. Over time, those lines stop being notes. They become armor. Revenge is cheap fuel. It burns hot, burns fast, and ruins the engine. Standards are clean fuel. They run quiet, steady, and carry you farther than you ever imagined. Let your pain graduate into policy. So ask yourself, which wound from your past is ready to stop being just a memory and start being the rule that protects your future? The 8th rule is non-reaction. Build the fortress. The loudest person in the room isn't always the strongest. Real strength is often the one presence that does not flinch, does not scramble, does not give away its center. Toxic people don't fear your arguments. They don't even fear your anger. What unsettles them most is your non-reaction. I learned this one evening at a cafe during my early 20s. A former friend, Rico, who had betrayed me in a business project, walked in with a group. He made sure to be loud enough so I could hear him brag about how he had outsmarted me. Everyone at his table laughed. My stomach tightened, the old fire returned, and 100 comebacks rushed through my head. For a moment, I even imagined flipping the table, making a scene. But then, I did something simpler. I took a slow sip of my coffee, looked at him once, and then turned back to my notebook. No anger, no defense, just stillness. Within minutes, his voice grew louder, almost desperate, because my silence was louder than any confrontation could have been. That's the paradox. When you no longer react, you no longer feed the performance. The fire dies when there is no oxygen. Chaos fades when you stop opening the door for it. And the fortress inside you grows stronger each time you refuse to be baited. Practical step 1 is the 10-second rule. When provoked, Don't answer for 10 full seconds. Breathe. Let the silence carry the weight. Most of the time, you'll realize no answer is needed at all. Practical step 2 is the mirror drill. Stand before a mirror once a day, recall a recent insult, and practice keeping your face calm, your shoulders relaxed, your eyes steady. Train your body to embody the peace your mind is learning. Non-reaction is not indifference. It's mastery. It's the decision to protect your energy like it is sacred. Because it is. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes, power is the man who refuses to move when others try to shake him. So ask yourself, what would your life look like if the next time someone tried to drag you into their chaos, you simply stayed still? The 9th rule is detachment. Cut the invisible strings. Walking away is not the same as being free. You can block a number, delete the photos, move across a city, and still find yourself replaying every word in your head. You've cut the access, but not the attachment. The strings are still tied inside you, pulling you back into a theater that ended long ago. I remember after my student breakup with Laura, I told myself I was done. No calls, no texts, no meetups. But weeks later, I'd still lie awake, scrolling through old conversations, wondering what I could have said differently. The relationship was gone, but the strings were alive and tight. That's when I understood. Freedom isn't outside distance. It's inside detachment. Toxic people don't need to be in your life to control you. They just need to rent space in your mind. And most of us keep paying that rent with guilt, with rumination, with the hunger for closure that will never come. So how do you cut those strings? Step 1 is awareness. The next time their face flashes in your thoughts, instead of fighting it, say quietly, "This is just memory, not reality." Memories are echoes. They cannot hurt you unless you grip them. Think of them like pop-up ads. Close the window, not your whole computer. Step 2 is replacement. When the string tugs, don't just drop it. Pick something else up. A walk, a page of journaling, a call to a friend who actually values you. Energy must be redirected, not denied. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is refusing to keep negotiating your peace with ghosts. Toxic people lose their last weapon when your mind stops dancing with their shadow. So ask yourself, which invisible string are you still holding? And what would happen if tonight you finally let it fall? The 10th rule is self-respect over approval. The root of every chain is not their words, but your craving. Craving for them to finally admit you were right. Craving for them to recognize your effort. Craving for them to say, "You didn't deserve that." But here's the truth. Approval is unstable. It can be handed out today and snatched back tomorrow. If your peace depends on that, you will always be bankrupt. I learned this after months of silence with someone who once meant the world to me. We hadn't spoken in ages, but in my mind, I kept waiting for the message that never came. An apology, a confession, even a scrap of validation. The day I realized it would never arrive, I broke. And then, strangely, I rebuilt. Because in that void, I discovered something I should have known all along. My respect for myself was worth more than their approval ever could be. This is the detox. Stop drinking from a poisoned cup and calling it water. Their praise is not nutrition, it is sugar. It feels good for a moment, but leaves you emptier than before. Self-respect, on the other hand, is steady food. It keeps you strong long after the applause fades. Practical step 1 is the mirror test. Each morning, ask yourself, what action today would make me respect myself more, even if nobody saw it? Do that. Let it anchor your day. Practical step 2 is the silent walk. Take 10 minutes alone, no phone, no noise, and repeat inside. I do not need their approval. I choose my own respect. Let the words settle into your bones until they stop feeling like affirmation and start feeling like fact. Approval is a leash. Leashes pull, standards anchor, self-respect sets you free. Self-respect is the blade that cuts it. When you finally stop auditioning for their praise, you stop being controlled. And when you stop being controlled, you become whole again. So ask yourself, whose stage have you been performing on? And when will you walk off to build your own? If this journey stirred something real in you, subscribe now, not for numbers, but for your peace. Tomorrow, we'll train the lens even sharper. 5 signs someone is already receiving their karma, so you can stop waiting for payback and start building your calm. You've walked through every rule. You've seen the beast starve when you stop feeding it. You've left the stage when the drama demanded an audience. You've built boundaries with calm instead of chaos. You've learned to mirror, not absorb. You've taken control of the oxygen. You've rehearsed peace in the small moments. You've turned wounds into standards. And you've discovered the fortress of non-reaction. Now, the final truth. Toxic people are not powerful. They only survive on the energy you keep giving them. They feed on your attention, your overthinking, your desperate need to be seen. But the moment you reclaim your attention, the moment you anchor yourself in self-respect, the game ends. You don't need their apology. You don't need their approval. You don't even need them to understand. What you need is to stand firm in who you are, untouchable not because the world became quiet, but because you did. Think of the last time someone tried to drag you into their storm. Remember the words, the heat, the pull. Now picture yourself in that same moment, steady, still, unshaken. Picture them shouting into silence, scrambling for reaction, and finding none. That is the image of freedom. This is not about revenge. This is not about proving them wrong. This is about becoming so rooted in peace that no storm can uproot you. The noise quiets, the door closes, your ground holds, and you remain whole, calm, dangerous in the best possible way. If your peace truly has value, stop putting it on discount. If your self-worth is sacred, stop renting it out to people who only break what they borrow. Your scars are no longer pain. They are policies. Your storms are no longer chaos. They are proof of your stance. In the end, the smartest way to deal with toxic people was never to beat them, never to outshout them, never to explain yourself into exhaustion. It was always this: to become someone they can no longer touch. So ask yourself one last question. Are you ready to stop reacting and start rising?